So conditionals are controls which statements get executed by depending on whether or not a value is true or false. And as we talked about in previous videos, we know that true or false is referred to as a Boolean. Let's start with an if statement with a conditional for a Boolean check. So we're going to do if true, print condition was true. Now if we run this, this gets printed out because the condition was true. So now if we do if false, and if we press play, then nothing was printed out because false pretty much just means that our check is not going to go through. So it's like a off. So anyways, we're going to make a key value pair here. Our key is going to be weapon and our value is going to be sword. It's going to be a string. And then if weapon equals sword, print player equipped a sword. So basically, if this was like a video game like World of Warcraft, you would right click on the sword and then the player would equip the sword. Hit play. Our player has equipped the sword. So now, real quick, how come I did double equals here? Well, the double equal tests for equality in different values, whereas a single equal sign is for assigning a key to a value. See here, when we're assigning this key of weapon to the value of sword, we're using an equal, because this is like assigning. It's like defining what weapon means. Weapon does not equal sword. We're just weapon equals sword as in we're defining it as sword. Whereas when we're comparing two, if the weapon equals sword, if these two values are the same, then we proceed. So this is like a comparison. And in order to get the comparisons down, let me quickly write out this comparisons. I'm just going to copy this over from a notepad. So here are all of our different comparisons that we can be using. What if our weapon isn't a sword? Let's say we redefined weapon down here, and weapon is no longer a sword, but is in fact a warhammer. So now if weapon is a sword, then this is not going to print out. And we can just delete these up here. So we don't get an input because the weapon was not sword, it was warhammer. But what if we wanted to print out something anyways, like maybe some error output? And for this one, we're going to do player can't equip that. And as you can see, this looks kind of weird. The colors are different, and that's because our single quote here thinks that it's closing off after can. So we're just going to do it the easy way and put in double quotes. Another way we can do this is leaving in the single quotes and then just put a backslash before this to like void it out. So then now we get player can't equip that because that's a warhammer, not a sword. And our player can only equip swords. So what if we wanted to add in more parameters? What if our player can equip a sword and he can also equip a warhammer? So then we could do player equipped a warhammer, and our else we're going to replace with something called elif weapon equals warhammer. Then we're going to print out this statement, and then player can't equip that. So now if we run play, if it's a warhammer, then the player equipped a warhammer. But if we change weapon to sword, then player equipped the sword. But if we change it to axe, then player can't equip that. So what if we want to add an axe? We could just keep adding these elif statements and keep modifying them. So we could do like axe here. So then we hit play, player equipped an axe. So now our player can equip 3 different weapons. And now I just want to add some additional comparisons that we can be doing with our Boolean operators. And these can be and, or, and not. So some examples of how we can use these is, let's say we have a user, an admin to our video game, and we want to check whether or not they're logged in. So if they're true, then we would have if user admin is logged in, then we will print admin is online. But if they're not logged in, then print admin is offline. See, this is an if statement checking whether or not these values are both true. So if the user is admin and they are also logged in, then it's going to print this out. But if the user is admin and they are not logged in, then it's just going to print this one out. Whereas, see if I hit play, it says admin is online. But if I change false, then it's going to say admin is offline. But if I change and to or, and they're offline, and I hit play, then it's going to say admin is online, even though they're not online, they're actually offline. And this is because with the or statement, It's just checking to see whether or not one of them is true. It doesn't care if both of them are true, it just wants one to be true. And if one is true, it's going to say admin is online, even though that could be false information. And then we can get into this not statement, which we're going to use a bit different. So this one, instead of comparing to or checking whether or not 2 is true, we're just going to do if not logged in, then it's going to say admin is online. And that's because we kind of have this backwards right now. So now we should have done offline at the top here and online at the bottom here. And if you wanted to do it the other way, then you would just type in if logged in is true. And it says false, but if we do true here, then we get admin is online. And now talking about object identity, you can test if objects have the same value by making 2 different lists. For an example, we can do A equals 1, 2, 3, and B equals 1, 2, 3. And if we do print A equals B, then this will say true. And there we get a true. Let me just clear this out and hit play again. So yeah, we got a true here. And now if we were to do print ID A and print ID B, we can just use these to validate that these identifiers look the same. So here it looks like we got 2 different numbers, which is interesting because they are different, but it says that they're both equal. So A is 1, 2, 3 and B is 1, 2, 3, but when we print them out, they're both kind of different. But when we do print is equal to B, they are both the same because the lists are the same, like the values are the same. So, but if we were to do print A is B and hit play, then it says false because as we can see, they are both different. And even if they were the same, they would still show as false because A and B are still uniquely identifying their own strings, even though they're the same. Whereas if you did B equals A and you typed play, then it would say true and the numbers would be the same. Because now B is no longer a self-unique identifier. Now it's identifying as A. And print A is B is actually just a shortened version of print ID A equals ID B. Or if you did is. So it is, or if you're doing the equal, then these two are the same. So these two are the same. This is just a shortened version of this. So this is kind of like the long form. So just a few more pointers with Booleans. So in this example, our condition is going to be false. And if the condition, and we're going to do an if statement for if condition, print evaluated to true, then we'll print this. Otherwise, our printer will evaluate to false. So now if I run play, this evaluates to false because our condition is false. If we put our condition in as none, it's going to do the same thing. If we do our condition as 0, it will do the same thing. Whereas if we put in 10, it'll say true. But a 0 is false. And any kind of empty sequence, like if we do double quotes like that, then it is false. Whereas if we add in a string, then it's going to say true. Same thing with double quotes. This is true. Whereas if we leave it empty, it'll be false. Same thing with parentheses. This is false, but this is true. And with brackets, this is true. And then last with mapping. So with the braces, you put nothing in them and they're just false.